I'm Stuart. Again, for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm one of the founders and the CEO of TransparentChoice. We're a software company, and we do portfolio management / governance-y type software. Right? It's really cool. That's not what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about stakeholders, right? So we're going to leave the world of governance and processes and tools and all that kind of stuff behind for a second. And we're going to focus on what really makes projects work. And that's people. People make it work. Now, I don't know, does anybody jump in there and tell me if you follow Stuart Taylor on YouTube? So Stuart Taylor he does a bunch of project management related YouTube videos. A lot of them are really good fun. Some of them are quite serious, some are quite good fun. But he just did an experiment where he tried to run a project, right? So he was creating a new training offering, and he tried to run that project using ChatGPT as the project manager. And it wasn't entirely successful. It wasn't an entirely a failure either. But for now, I think the conclusion is we still need people. Okay, so people are what make projects work. People are also usually what cause projects to fail. So I have invited on today Dawn Mahan. Now, Dawn, if you don't know Dawn, she is an absolute megastar. So she does a lot of PMO training, project management training. She does a lot of charity work. She just actually was doing a charity golf thing yesterday, right, Dawn? Yay. She has built houses out in Cambodia. She has done all kinds of, I think it was Cambodia, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah. So she's done all sorts of really fascinating things, but by far, the most exciting thing she's ever done in her life was share a table next to the pool with me in Saudi Arabia, right? And it was you, me, there was Laura Barnard there. We had Lee Lambert was there. Who else was there? We had Mona Sukhreb, Heba Al-Shehi, 2 times winner of the PMO Leader of the Year award. And her husband, and we had a lovely night. We got the guitar out, which was interesting because it only had 5 strings. And anyway, while we're sitting by the pool, Dawn and I got talking about her latest book. And those of you who know me know that I talk a lot about ducks. Okay, why ducks? Well, because your executives, right, really don't care about your projects. They really don't, right? They don't care if you've got a boy duck or a girl duck. They don't care about your Gantt charts. They don't care what methodology you use. They don't care about any of that stuff. They don't care if you've got a boy duck or a girl duck. They just care about eggs, right? The value of the project. That's the only thing they care about. And I dare say we might touch on that a little bit later on. But this whole theme of ducks led to a conversation about other animals. And of course, you can't talk about other animals without talking about Projectland, Dawn's latest book. Okay, so this is such a creative way to talk about stakeholders around projects. It's a load of fun, but it's also a very kind of practical book about how to engage stakeholders, how to avoid pitfalls, how to manage the snakes, right? Things like that. So we're gonna take a little wander through Projectland today with Dawn, and hopefully learn a few things. And as I say, nice one, Ashok, I like it. And hopefully hopefully you guys will join in, share some of your experiences, share some of the challenges maybe that you've had. We can get Dawn's thoughts on it. And I'm going to start, Dawn, actually, with just a couple of quick questions. So the first one, in the green room, we were talking about that quote about a book being the distillation of, right? So tell us a little bit about that, and then tell us about kind of where you started. What was the inspiration for this book? And then we'll get into kind of the topic from there.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me, Stuart. I love having chats with you. They're always so much fun. And I just love how aligned we are on so many of the kind of topics that we like to talk about and help people with. So thanks for having me. So where the inspiration came from, first of all, I love books. If anybody else loves books, give us a yes in the chat. there. I love books because I grew up in a small town and the library basically saved my life because I was bored out of my mind. And so books were a way to escape for me and learn. And I became a voracious leader at a very young age. And look at this, Amy, Jenny, Cheryl, Tabitha, Justice, Ryan, yes, Annette. So we have some book lovers here too. Yay, Ed. Thank you, Mahesh. So yeah, so books definitely I've been a big fan for a long, long time. And in fact, I tend to have multiple books that I'm reading at once at different times of day. So I have morning books, I have evening books, I have kind of day books. And so what happened, which was wild to me, is back in about 2010, I was in Chicago at a client. And in Chicago, this group was a very low maturity organization as far as projects went. So the president of the company was new there, knew me, looked around and was like, these people don't know how to operate projects. They don't get it. They're wide-eyed. They don't understand anything about when I say, well, when can you get this done? Like create a schedule. They have no idea what to do, right? So he said, can you help me out? I said, sure. So he flew me to Chicago, along with
Just to be clear, Dawn, right? So we have
yeah,
some Brits on the call. So
yes,
a schedule is what we would call a schedule. Let's see if we could get Dawn speaking the
thank
English
you.
language by the end of the call. Let's give it a go, folks. Let's see if we could just
A
pick her up and just
schedule.
keep her schedule. There you go. That's
Yeah.
it.
Thank you. Thank you. So anyway, I'm in this room of very seasoned people. Most of the people had worked here for over 20 years. And the one of the gentlemen named Jermaine looked up at me in the middle of class and he goes, Dawn, where's the book? And I said, what? And he said, Dawn, where's the book? I want the book with all the stories you tell and all the tips, and I want it on my desk. I want it with me because you're gonna go away and I want that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like you would want a book of what? And so it was my turn to be confused. And so anyway, he planted the seed in like 2010. And so it had been sort of hanging out there for a while, ever since then.
That's cool. That's so cool. And it's funny how often it starts like that. I was talking to Laura, and I think Laura Barnard, and yeah, and so her book actually lives on my nightstand, right? So every night I go to bed with Laura, which isn't something I should say because her husband's bigger than I am and stronger than I am, right? But hey, there you go. Um, so, but it's not a dissimilar story, right? It's the fact that there's so much experience that you have that Laura has, and she's got a book coming out as well. These people have so much experience, real world experience, and what you've done in this one, that I really enjoyed is you found a voice that makes it very approachable, right? Because
Thank
stakeholder
you.
engagement, it can be, yeah, we all know we should do it. I spent 3 hours working with one of my guys today on how we're going to help our partners do stakeholder engagement better. And it can be a little dry and a little yeah, we know we've got to think about the width and this, that, and the other, right? But what you've done in the book is bring it alive. So how did you come up with the
Thank you.
idea of using animals? Actually, first thing, has anybody read the book? Just bang in the chat. I'm not expecting anybody to have read it. This
Oh,
time
I
next,
know. At least one person has read it
there you go.
here for sure.
James is it? Yeah, there we go. We got a bunch of people who've read it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
James, you got through it. All right. Awesome.
Oh,
Great.
James devours books. He's brilliant. Um,
Awesome.
uh,
Not finished yet. Okay. So we have a couple in progress. Great.
Excellent. Ryan's out on Amazon as we speak. Good stuff.
Oh, thank
Um,
you, Ryan. So you had mentioned about the green room, what we were talking about, and I just want to highlight that. So I met this other author named Nick Hutchinson. So any of you guys that are big book readers too. So he wrote Rise of the Reader. And in that book, he talks about how he realized that books were a way to get access to people and their brains and decades of experience for 20 bucks, or a quid or whatever. Right. And so I thought, that is so true that you can get access to all these people that have all of this experience that they condense decades into, 200 pages, 250 pages, or whatever it is. And so I was on a webinar recently, and they were like, hey, why'd you write the book? And I told, the story about Jermaine in Chicago. And I said, but I also get asked for people to pick my brain a lot. Right. And it was like, instead, now it's like anybody can just go get the book and,
Right.
read it at your leisure. And if you're an ebook person or a paperback person, I've become both, right, for different reasons. Like I got Nick's book on as an ebook because I was traveling a lot, and I did 127 highlights in this book, like, because it
Oh,
counts
wow.
it. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I mean, he had wellness tips for health, wealth, and happiness in there. So there were a lot of highlights in that area too. But, so anyway, Rise of the Reader by Nick Hutchinson. And he talks about how to get the most of the books you do read, which I was like, why didn't I ever think of this? So smart. Anyway, so I just wanted to highlight that, Stuart, since you had mentioned about what we were talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. No, that's fantastic. So give us a really high level overview of, why animals?
Yeah,
Why animals? What do they mean? Right? There's it's a really fun metaphor, right? So just talk us through the
thank you.
metaphor at a high level.
Yeah, so what happened is, I was starting to try to figure out, okay, all of this project experience I had PMO director experience, and I kept finding myself being invited into low maturity organizations where they literally have no idea how this works, none. And so I thought, well, what's a fun way to talk about the players, to talk about the people, that people aren't going to get offended? Because if you create avatars and you like call one Fred, and they're the snake, essentially the saboteur of the project, then some really nice guy named Fred is going to get mad at you. So I was like, you can't be mad at a snake for being a snake, because a snake is a snake and that's just how they operate, right? So I thought, all right, well, let's just see. And so I played with the idea of these animal avatars, and it started to work. It started to work. And so like on the front cover of our practical project management training is a beautiful picture of of a tiger face. And when we start practical project management school, as opposed to theoretical version, right? This is the real world stuff where we get real in class, about how the people operate. That I ask them, what's your word? Like when you see this picture of this beautiful tiger, what word comes to mind first when you think about the world of projects that I call Projectland? And it's amazing what all the words are that come out of it, And so we started to embrace the tiger, and that's my logo for PMOtraining.com and all of our divisions, is this sort of digital tiger. And so it was like, okay, we're embracing the tiger as the animal avatar for the project manager, but then it's sort of ballooned from there. Well, if the tiger is the project manager, then the lion has to be the boss, the sponsor of the project as well, right? And that has resonated also when we do sponsor school. So we have this gorgeous, fierce lion picture, right, on the front, and I'm like, y'all are the lion. So when you roar, then all the creatures are on edge in Projectland. And it's like, then the executives are like, oh, you know what? That's true. Like, even though they're like, I'm a nice person, I don't understand why people are intimidated by me. I'm like, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's your role. Maybe it's your position. Maybe it's the authority you have. So you have to be aware that the interpretation that the rest of the creatures may have of you is that you are a lion and you're pretty darn scary. Right. And so if you get upset and you get passionate and like, please check yourself in the right way. Sometimes there's an appropriate time to do that. And other times, if you roar at somebody when they say the project is red, you guess what? It will be green forevermore. You will never
Just
get
say
the
that
joke.
again. Just say that again, because that's so important.
Isn't it? I mean, this is what we teach the sponsors, like your reaction, sponsors, to when people come to you with a problem needs to be, how can I help? How can I help? Right? That's all you have to say, because usually somebody knows how you can help if you're the sponsor, and they can tell you, how you can help. Like, listen, I tried this, I tried this, I tried that. Do you have any other ideas? And then instead of saying, well, you should have tried this, you could say, have you considered this other thing? And they was it, no, I didn't consider it. Let me go try that. Right. And I'll let you know how it works out. And so being helpful is what we want our sponsors to be, not scary.
So is the lion morphing into a wise old owl?
Aha. So we do have animal avatars for the steering team. So in the chat, y'all, if imagine what your steering team members, what the animal avatars might be for those, if you have not read the book yet or gotten to that chapter. So tell us what you think they are. And Stuart just gave one away, the owl. So what I also find in low maturity organizations is that they don't know when they need a steering team. So either there are way too many steering teams and, you know, there are way too many leaders engaged on way too many projects that they don't need to be engaged on, you know, or they don't have a steering team when they need one. And so I find that teaching sponsors how to sniff out when they need a steering team and who they then need on the steering team is important, because some cultures are very inclusive and they're like, oh, well, so-and-so is going to get upset if they're not on the steering team, if such and such is on the steering team. It's like when you're planning a wedding and you're like, well, you got to cut the family tree off here, you know, and like all the cousins at this level have to be invited, or none of the cousins at this level have to be invited, right? It's like the same kind of culture, which is really Mahesh says
I love
rad.
that. I love that, Mahesh. You ask
Yes.
what animals you see on project steering committees. Mahesh is straight in rat.
Straight, nice, nice. So he must also be a mob movie fan. So the owl, you know, if you think about what are the projects that need a steering team, and I really want, you know, in high maturity organizations, we are very thoughtful about this, right? We are the ones, we are thinking about, okay, if we have the 80-20 rule, right? What I'm hoping is that the right sponsor was assigned, first of all, who can make 80% of the decisions. And in cases where they need help to make the other 20% of the decisions, that's when you know you need a steering team, right? So it could be geographically dispersed projects, right? Projects where there's a big component that isn't in the sponsor's wheelhouse, right? Like, for instance, you know, there might be a big software component, but it might be a big business process component too. And you can have a steering team of one. And some people are like, what do you mean? And like, you can have a steering team of one. Yes, you can. And that is highly appropriate. And it's happened many, many times. And it can work really, really well. So, you know, thinking about that. But there's the like authority side of how you choose a steering team, the steering team members. Well, you know, if you have an engineer and a quality, and they're like kind of 50-50 on the work of the project, but really, you know, the engineer is the one that reports to the executive boss. Like, this is exactly what happened to a client of ours, where they had to choose between the two guys, like, which one of you is going to be the sponsor. And I said, and I totally meant it, either one of you would make a great sponsor for this, because it's kind of 50-50 on the work content. And so I said, you know, so they said, we're going to be co-sponsors. Thank God there wasn't video in those days. I was like, no, anything but that. Co-sponsors is a recipe for disaster,
Absolutely.
right? So
Yeah,
when
100%.
in tools like yours, there's like one name that can go in the column, right? That's what we want. We want one name to go in the column. And I even have a story in my book about how I was sitting in this organization, and the CEO looked across the table at me and said, I need one throat to choke. And I'm like, did he just really say that? Yes,
Yeah.
really did. But I thought, oh yes, that is it though. That is really, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, the whole at the end of the day, that's the point of an executive sponsor, is to be accountable.
Yes.
You know, the business case is for a project is their business case.
Yes.
They are the ones who have the authority, right? The positional authority to make things happen, right? That's what they are for, is to be accountable. They are there to be the throat that gets choked. And trust me, they get paid for it. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't feel bad for them. Don't feel
Nope.
bad for them. That's what they're there for. So I'm really interested, right? Because we've had a few elephants. Leo, mate, you need to go get some therapy. I mean, hippo, sheep, lots of sheep. I love it. I love it.
These are brilliant. These are brilliant. A
It's great.
fox. Yeah.
Lots of bears. We got lots of bears in there. So do you know what? When I was walking across before we started this, I was thinking, okay, as the CEO of a business, what animal do I think my team sees me as?
Oh, there's a good question.
It just got me thinking, and actually, I have to say that half the time, I hope it's that kind of wise owl. The other half of the time, I'm the bear. Because you're gonna poke me and you're gonna get a growl. Because if you come to me with something stupid, you're gonna get a growl. I don't bring me problems, yes, right, but don't bring me a problem and then spend 10 minutes telling me all the technical detail of your problem, because that's not my job,
Right.
So this is part of where we're going to go with the conversation. I think is how do we engage with those lions to get the most out of them?
Yeah.
Right? Because they are lions. I'm a bear. I am a bear. Right. That's my job, is to be a bear, right, or a lion, or whatever you want to call me. Right. The bear sort of suits my side-on profile a little better.
Oh,
Right?
please.
Too much honey. But the point is, right, you can affect the behavior of that bear. If you go in and poke the bear, he's going to growl at you and he's going to take a swipe.
Yeah.
But if you go in prepared and you treat the bear with respect and you give it what it needs, right, that bear is going to roll over and let you rub its tummy all day long.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So let's kind of go there just for a minute, right? Let's stay with the senior leadership and the steering committee and the sponsor.
You just said a bad word.
Oh no, sorry. Go on, tell me why it's a bad word.
So there's this great quote that I put in the book too, that committees, it was by Milton Berle, right? It's something like committees burn hours or take minutes and burn hours, like something like that. We'll have to find it. And so it's one of you that have the book, you can find it, the Milton Berle quote, and share it in here if you want perfectly. So it's not, because I'm paraphrasing. But so yeah, the bad word is steering committee. And it's because committees, we don't run project by committee, right? Because of the whole accountability problem. So when I work in nonprofits, there are a lot of committees, right? And so they think, oh, it's a steering committee. No, like, would you ever like to get this project done? Would you like to see it get done ever? Oh, okay. Well, then we have a steering team, and words matter. So one of the things that I really emphasize a lot is correcting people when they accidentally say steerco or steering committee,
you're spot on.
because let's get the vibe right, that we are a team working toward a goal to get this thing done, right? Like, let's get it done.
And we do the same thing. So we often talk about panels. So when you're collecting information and data and opinions, right, that's a panel. We're getting people's input, right? They're not making a decision. They have no decision-making authority, but they can have input, right? So that's a panel. So you're absolutely right, Dawn. I'm sorry,
Yes.
I'll sit in the corner. I'll be quiet.
I think you did it on purpose so we could have that teaching moment.
Yeah,
so
I did. Absolutely, yes.
Thank you,
yes,
Stuart.
absolutely.
So back to the task at hand, right? So the lion, if you think about, if you would like to, imagine your sponsor is a lion, right? It's like, okay, they might be in a bad mood. They might have had a hard morning, right? They might have just come out of the meeting with the CEO who just handed them, a whole pile of nonsense that they have to deal with, or a really tough problem. You never know. I mean, these people are really, really busy, really important, making a lot of money, hopefully, because they deserve it for the stress level that they're under. And so you need to be aware of this. So I love what you said, Stuart, about, going in prepared. One way to go in prepared is to really think about the profile of your lion. What is really the profile of your lion? So if Stuart were a lion, he would say, don't give me the technical details. That's not my job. I'm going to get really annoyed. I'm going to roll my eyes and I'm going to tell you to get to the bottom line of how I can help you, because I don't have time to hear all your technical details, right? And that's fair. So if you need to know the profile of your lion first. So in the book, I have evil sponsor behaviors and also evil steering team behaviors. Now, the people aren't evil necessarily, right? Some of them are. I've dealt with them, unfortunately, in Projectland. But when you think about, no human is perfect. No human is definitely perfect under stress. And Projectland is 100% stressful because the clock is always ticking on a project, right? Like there's a time sensitivity on projects. Nobody says, take all the time you need and means it, right? Ever. I mean, come on. Never, never, never. So yeah, I love what James just said, you got to go in honest and not sugarcoat it because they can smell the BS, right? If you forgive me for that. So it is important to develop a great relationship with them. And one of the things that I like to think about is, okay, they're going to have strengths. You as a PM, if you're a PM in a PM role or a PMO role, you're going to have strengths. And it's important to make sure that the lion is surrounded by the people who can build them up and help them be successful and be the rock stars that they need to be on the project so that the project is successful. So if, for instance, one of the evil behaviors is when they can't make a decision on time, right? They're indecisive. And so you have to figure out, how can I get them to make the decision on time? And that's part of your role, is to help support their decision making. So if they prefer analysis paralysis, then hey, 6 weeks out from the decision I need, I'm going to have to start to understand from them, what information do they need to make said decision? When do they need it by? How can we get them ready to make the decision on time, right? So that's just one example.
Absolutely, and putting it into context, right? The when people bring, we're only a small company, right? But when people bring stuff to me, if they walk in and they start saying, well, I need you to make a decision. Okay, what's the decision? We need to know whether we should do this or this. Okay, those are two things I have no knowledge about. So you're gonna have to help me out here, right? And so then they go from 10,000 feet to 3 feet. That's no good. That doesn't help
Down in the
me.
weeds. Yep.
Down in the weeds, right? So it's about learning the language of the creature you're talking to. I think that's, I'm putting words in your mouth a little bit.
That's
there,
absolutely right. Yeah.
But it's about learning the language of the creature that you're dealing with, and speak in their language, right? So if you're dealing with me, right, bring me a problem, great, but then bring me some solutions and tell me why each one of those is good or bad, right? Because then I've got information I can use to kind of say, yeah, okay, this feels like about the right balance, right? Or I can ask further questions or whatever.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. And I feel like when this question that came through from Ashok, how do we learn that language? If you haven't already worked with this person, or you're new to the organization, one of the things that I love to suggest, if you don't know the language of that sponsor, is find out somebody who does, right? Find out somebody who has worked with that person closely, who, can give you some advice about how best to work with them. I mean, even to the point of practicality on, do they prefer to have morning meetings or afternoon ones, right? Is it better to get them, at what time of day is it best to get them? Because I'll tell you what, my name is Dawn, and it shouldn't be, because I am not a morning person. Like, please do not put a 7 a.m. meeting on my calendar.
Well, it's just to remind you that there is a dawn in the day, right?
It's like, so I don't do well then. So please don't set me up that way. And it's like, if you want to get out of me what you need out of me, set it up for the time that you need it, and set me up for success in giving you what you need. And that's how every sponsor really, truly operates. So find out from somebody that's worked with that person before, well, gee, what are their ticks? Like, what's a landmine I don't want to step in with them, right? What advice do you have for me? And anytime anybody has said to me, hey, I'd really like some advice, it's hard to deny somebody that, if you're like, I really need some advice about Stuart. because I have not worked with him before, and I'd really like to know how to be successful in working with him as a leader. And people should give that person some advice and be happy to do it, right? If they're not a snake.
Wow, well, right, we'll come to the snakes in a minute. Before we leave there, right? So as a project manager or a PMO leader, right? You are a leader. You're a leader. And so
100%.
again, when you are presenting or when your team is presenting to those lions, it's not just your responsibility to communicate yourself clearly. It's also your responsibility to make sure your team also understands how they need to be communicating and that they are communicating clearly. Right? That's part of the responsibility of being a leader, right? Being that tiger, right? Tigers have claws and teeth as well, right? So don't be afraid to, I'm not saying you should go and maul your team, but don't be afraid to lead, right? And don't be afraid to kind of coach and say, guys, this is, if we want this outcome, this is how we need to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the number one practical tip I share in our practical project management certificate class about the role of the project manager, is that number one is they need to embrace the leadership role. And when we were talking a little bit earlier about low maturity organizations, one of the big problems in low maturity organizations many times is that the project manager is between a rock and a hard place on they have been given allegedly the authority to run the project, but nobody gets that, right? And so they keep going to their bosses for advice instead of the project manager, or the project manager says, I have to lead with no authority, right? I don't have any authority. Well, that's a shame, because if the organization wants this person to run the project, they better enforce the authority that role has to set them up for success. Otherwise, it's a total zoo.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
Very much so. Okay, so let's kind of carry on. So there's a couple of comments and questions coming in.
Yeah.
So Mahesh also put a question in the Q&A, and the nut of it is, okay, in a PMO, nobody knows what I'm for, right? And I'm putting words in your mouth, Mahesh, but that's close enough, right? So the execs, they don't know what I'm for. There's no transparency. There's no support buy-in. So any thoughts there? Because that's a slightly different scenario to being a project manager, right? It's a different set of stakeholders at some level.
The PMO stakeholders?
Mm,
Is that really, that's it? Yeah. Yeah. So, so when I was a PMO director, right, and we were changing the way that the whole organization ran projects. Like, it was utter chaos before. We were getting professional PMs in. They were telling people, like, leading people through the process, and people were resisting all over the place. I call it the resistance. Right. And so as a PMO leader, I had to really worry about all of these stakeholders, but I couldn't do it all at once. So I had to concern myself with the executives and the team leads, like the department heads and stuff like that. And I would have one-on-ones with all of them and be like, what's going on? How are you feeling, about your PM? How are you, I'd check in with the sponsors. How are they feeling about the PM? And I would gather this intel. And one of the key things that I did that I didn't know would be so impactful, and really, really was I had my crew of professional project managers, and I said, you guys, we are the face of project management. This is the fourth time this organization has tried to do a PMO. If we don't succeed, it's over, right? So what I need you to do is realize you are the face of project management to the people that you work with. And I need you to come back to me with the value you are delivering and when your project delivers value. And so what I did was I had a piece of paper, and I had, I started to track like the value delivery. So for instance, when the organization decided that we already had it, like a business organization said, we want a tool, right? This happens all the time. We want a tool. We want this tool IT. We want you to put it in. And the IT organization, you know, we went through the process, whatever, and we realized, oh, the problem they're really trying to solve here is solved by a tool we already have in-house. So we saved them, you know, $250,000 and 12 weeks at minimum, right? And so we calculated that, and I'm like, you know, in 6 months, we were to $1 million in value. So as the PMO head, I was like, everybody I talked to, I was like, did you know that we delivered $1 million in value in only 6 months? Did you know that, you know, my team is delivering $1 million in value in only 6 months? And then the resistance started to deflate a little bit, which is key. So like proof, you know, you have to, if in low maturity organizations where you're trying to bring maturity, they want proof. They're, you know, if anybody on the call is from the show me state in the US, right? The show me state, it's like they're all from the show me state. Show me the value, show me. And you have to prove it. And so that like thermometer of we're delivering this value, we delivered this value in this way and this value in that way, you know, line it up.
So there's a good, I said we were going to talk about people and things and avoid the process and the tools, but Leo, you just set it up for me. So I'm gonna dive in there just for a second. So actually I'm gonna go back a couple of comments. Ashok, so you said something there about, you know, get the charter out and get people to buy into it and you're golden. Like, yeah, okay, maybe. I'm going to steal something from Laura Barnard here. I like the way Laura thinks about this stuff. She's not a big fan of the charter. What she talks about is building a business plan, right?
For the PMO, yeah.
For the PMO, that's right. So you are a business, right? Your customers, right, the executives, they give you money and resources. And what they expect in return is value. Yep. Gregor, good to see you. I didn't see you there. Good to see you, Gregor. Welcome. So what they expect in return is value. And the way that you're delivering that value is you're cranking out projects, and those projects create benefits in the business that we can measure. And so, Leo, we get to your question now. How do we measure that? So that starts really with you know, this is actually about governance, portfolio governance. It's about, you got to start by knowing what are the KPIs the business cares about.
Yep.
Right. So if the business, if you're in a cash cow business, right, then actually they don't care about market share because they already have it, right? They've got it all. They've got all they're ever going to get. So they care about efficiency and reducing cost and all of these things so they can milk the profit out and put it into the rising stars, right? If you're in a rising star, you care about growth and you might not care about margin, right? So you need to understand the business KPIs. And then you need to do the prioritization stuff so that you're helping the business select the projects that support their KPIs. Then you need to deliver the projects and measure the KPIs, right? I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, right? But if you do that, then you can turn around and you can say, okay, you said you wanted $1 million of savings. I've delivered 1.2.
Right. And you have to tell people. Yeah. Like some people are a little too humble on this. I was like, this wasn't me, this was my team, right? So I was like, look at, you know, yeah. They're like, any questions? You know, about the, right? So yeah, that's really important. And on the people side, like the thing that also happened, right, is people like to pick. So they're part of the resistance, right, is about people want to pick. So sometimes it's about how, you know, they're just trying to bring people down because they don't like what is happening. So they're going to pick at things, right? And they're going to ask a lot of questions, and you better be ready to answer them. And you better be operating in a way that the culture can digest.
Woodpecker. Love it. Woodpecker.
Nice.
That's your person picking.
Yeah, perfect, Leo. So what I feel is, and I talk about this in the book, is some of the cultural implications for how to operate in your version of Projectland, right? Like, do you even know if I walked into your organization and said, describe your version of Projectland to me, what are the characteristics that really are important to know to navigate your version of Projectland? Right? That is important to understand so that you can operate in the right way in whatever role you're in. So for instance, if when we work with government or governmental organizations, right, they're very risk averse because they know that they could be under media scrutiny for the wrong decision, right? Like, so if, let's say they bring in a software and they spend $20 million and they get zero value out of it. I mean, that could be a headline, right? Like city wastes another 20 million of taxpayers' money in America, right? Like that's, yeah. So they're risk avoiders. So decisions take a long time. So if you are if you have a high risk tolerance and you're shooting from the hip, you're going to probably be a little friction sometimes there. And you have to know how to operate in the culture that you're in. And what I like to think about is how can you start to move your culture into more of a healthy culture that gets results and push it, push it toward that in a way that doesn't break you, because you're the one that's going to break, by the way. The organization's not going to break. It's you, right? You're going to find yourself out the door if that's the case. So anytime, and project leaders, PMO leaders, I have been there. Many times you're asked to be a change agent in a low maturity organization. And when you are asked to be a change agent, here's my advice for you. Either run the other way or don bulletproof vest, because it's going to be hard, right? It's also very, very satisfying when you can sit back in 6 months and say, we delivered $1 million in value. We're changing the way the organization gets projects done, and it's better and it's faster and it's cheaper, and people are having a better experience of it as well. So it can be extremely satisfying, but it can also be just really, really hard.
And one of the animals that makes it so hard, I've been trying to figure out how we got back to this one, so I'm really delighted there. Very pleased with myself on this segue.
Yeah.
So one of the creatures that makes that so difficult is the snake. So talk to us about snakes. How do we spot a snake first?
And sometimes you don't, right? So the idea with the whole snake is stakeholders are either love your project, hate your project, or somewhere in between. And the snakes are the ones that hate your project. They may not want you to succeed. They may not want the project to succeed for some reason, but really, every villain is a hero in their own story. So snakes feel like they're protecting their territory. They feel like, they feel righteous in their, in their perspective. And the idea that I was talking about is, about Projectland is, do you know what yours is really the profile of your Projectland? And if you are sort of skipping through the meadow of Projectland and you're not watching out for snakes, if you get close to one, it's going to jump up and bite you. Right. And this has happened to me, many times where I didn't see that one coming. And so we talked about, stakeholder analysis before, and how stakeholders, people, like, especially in tech, people don't think about the people as much as they should. And that's been my experience in, decades in technology, where we just think about the process and the tools and we don't think about the people as much as we should. Well, I really hope that with this book, people start to realize the sad truth is that if you don't know who your snakes are, you're going to find out. And it's going to be the hard way, right?
And do you think, and so let me ask you this, do you think a snake is a personality, or is it an artifact of circumstance?
So I think it can be both, in either or. So some people come across as naysayers. I saw that. So some people come across that way, but really that's just their personality. They're just questioners. They like to ask questions. They like to challenge. It's, that's just kind of how they operate and think things through. And that's fine. They're analysts, I've been there myself. But other times they legit don't want you to succeed and will figure out a way to help you fail. And so like they all exist. I mean, all of these creatures can exist at different times or another. And Leo asked the question, what animal comes across as a supporter, and then snakes you, maybe a hyena. So I have been asked the question, like, what's the next book? And we're actually working on Projectland Goes to the Movies. And the chapter I just wrote as an example chapter is from the Italian Job, Leo. And that is, if anybody saw the Italian Job with Mark Wahlberg and Charlize Theron, many years ago now, it's like, I think it's a 20-year-old movie now. I just love it. It's one of my favorites. Ed Norton's character was a team member and he turns on them. And so he was a snake inside the team. So it turns out he was a saboteur inside the team. And that can happen. I think it's a little bit more rare than the stakeholder that feels threatened, right? But it has happened to me. And there's a story in the book about it, about a steering team member that sabotaged a project.
So, there's a question. So Ashok asked a question: how do we dodge and counter move around the snakes, manage the snakes? And my guess is the answer is that it depends on what kind of snake they are, right? Are they a mean snake, or are they just a snake defending the territory that you just startled? So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, who are the snakes comes out when you do your stakeholder analysis. And as part of the book, there are some resources that I use, that our team uses. One of them is called the Stakeholder Analysis and Management Matrix. And the first thing is you just start to identify who the different stakeholders are, and you have a very private conversation with the sponsor, for instance, about, the stakeholders and their profiles. So who is a cheerleader for your project, right? Who loves your project and is a cheerleader? Who might hate your project, right? Who might be somewhere in between, that finicky fan. And so the first step is just identify them and then start to realize, okay, who might not be a fan of this project for any reason at all, right? So like if the sponsor has a conflict with another leader in the organization, that could just come with it, just because they just don't like each other. I mean,
Yeah,
people are
happens.
people, right? It could be anything. And so if you're the project manager, right, or you're the PMO leader who's advising your project managers on how to figure the people side out, this is one of the ways where it's like, make sure everybody's having the private conversation about the people, which is very uncomfortable for people, which is why I use animals instead, right? And say, okay, who might be a snake in the grass here? And then think about, well, what is their perspective? Because then, as you said, Stuart, then you can figure out, okay, are they just going to defend their territory? Are they just going to be part of the resistance just for resistance sake, right? Are they like, what is their perspective? And then you can prepare for, all right, well, what are we going to do about this? And sometimes, and I encourage this too, the PM is like, well, they said to do nothing. I said, write that down. Write that down then. The sponsor said, do nothing, wait and see. Write it down. Because later, if that snake comes up and bite you and they go, well, why didn't you see that coming? You'll be like, we talked about this and we said do nothing and wait and see. It's right here in black and white, And so, oh yeah, because we have short-term memory loss problems a lot of times as sponsors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And, and again, I think it's important to highlight that. The project manager and the PMO, right? You're there as custodians of a change process or a series of change processes. You stay with that change process, usually from the beginning to the end. You're the only person that lives it day to day. Your individual delivery resources come in and they go out. Your stakeholder, your sponsor, he thinks about this once every 2 weeks when you have your 1-hour meeting. The rest of the time, the head's full of other stuff, right? So,
yep.
It is important to understand that stakeholder map, right? I like that stakeholder matrix way of putting it, Ashok. I think that's a really nice way. Just understanding, what animals do you have around the table? But remember that people, just because somebody is a snake now, or a gazelle or whatever they are, right, doesn't mean that's what they'll always be.
Right.
It just means that's what they are now. And you can decide, you can actually do things to change the kind of animal, or at least the way the animal's behaving. Just like with a bear, right? If you go in with a big stick and you poke the bear, it's going to growl, So don't poke the bear, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I love
So
that. And in fact, since there are clearly some PMO leaders on the line, I just want to point out, like, so back to that story about how we were changing the way the whole organization did it, and I checked in with sponsors and stuff. I assigned a PM, a pro PM, to a sponsor and said to her, "Your job is to turn this guy around. He is against us. He doesn't get it. He wants us to run this project because if it fails, then it's on us. Like, this is what is happening. I need you to go in with eyes wide open that this is what is happening. He is today an enemy, and you need to turn him into a fan. Are you up for it?" And I knew she would be, and she was. And that's exactly what she did. So not only did she run the project and help him be successful with his very risky project, but also she turned him into a fan. And so when I would check in with him, the demeanor changed, over time, because he was not, he didn't get it at first. He had never experienced this type of thing before, but he was an ambitious guy and he really wanted to obviously, do well. But he was also trying to cover his bases. Like,
by the way, Ed, I love Ed's thing. So give the snake a rat, right? I like that. Um, so that's brilliant. But sometimes, you know what? You can give the snake a rat. You can carefully go around its territory. You can get someone to shout at it, and it's just not going to play. It's going to try and bite you anyway. And sometimes that happens. And at the end of the day, that's another risk that goes on your risk register at some level, right?
yes,
And you say, great, we have a risk that some of our stakeholders aren't buying in,
right.
and you make it visible, and
Yep.
you have a discussion with your sponsor, and you figure out what you do.
Yeah. What are we going to do about it? And for
It
those,
might be that the right answer is that that your sponsor will go and shoot the snake and put another animal in there.
yeah,
That's a good
absolutely.
outcome.
Yep. And sometimes, I used to think as a PM that I had to do everything, right? That it was up to me to do everything because I had really bad sponsors that did nothing before. Anybody been there? And then I realized, like, oh, when we have this stakeholder analysis and management matrix in front of people's faces, and we go, okay, what are we going to do about this? Right? Sometimes the best answer is the sponsor has to do something about it. They're in the best position to do something about it, just as you said, Stuart. And it could be like, listen, you need to make sure that you take that person to lunch, that you have a coffee conversation with them over virtually, that you understand them, that you develop a relationship with them, whatever it is, right? Do whatever you need to do to get the humans to do what they need to do when they need to do them, right? That's kind of what your job is as a PM. And our job as PMO leaders is to support our PMs in doing that and have their backs.
Beautiful. So we've got just a couple of minutes left. So what I'd like to do, Dawn, is just give you a couple of minutes to tell people where they can get the book, where they can reach you if they need help and support beyond the book. I understand you do bar mitzvahs and golf tournaments.
That's very funny. So I am pulling up so of course you can find it on Amazon, but also you can go to this link I'm pulling up now, and I'm going to drop it in the chat. And so the book is available on Amazon and beyond, certainly. And so I'm going to drop that in the chat for everyone here. Hold, please. Here we go. There it is. And if you do get the book and you do, like the book, please give it your highest star rating possible and say something nice if you would, because our publicist, by the way, is killing me with, Dawn, we need 50 reviews. So the last time I checked, we had 22 reviews and we need to get to 50 on Amazon, because as far as media goes and all that stuff, Amazon is the Google of books, he says. And so anybody that doesn't know me, whatever, will go to Amazon and go, oh, what do the reviews say? Blah, 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 blah. Now, if you have suggestions for the books, because some of you are analysts, right? And even God in heaven would not get 5 stars from you. Please send me a LinkedIn message and let me know what it would take to get your 5-star review. I would be really curious about that. I love feedback. I love, love, love feedback. So tell me what you really think. So please, I invite you to link in with me. Stuart and I are connected on LinkedIn. So if you're connected with Stuart, then a friend of his is a friend of mine on LinkedIn. Please check it out. And I'd be delighted to hear what you think. And you know, your version of Projectland. Tell me more. So please link in with me. That's the best way to get.
And stop being cheap, guys. Come on. 20 bucks or whatever it is for 25 years experience. That's a bargain.
$9.99 for the ebook.
$9.99.
Right?
Come on. Stop being cheap.
$9.99 for the ebook. Yeah.
By the way, I don't know if anybody here has actually looked at writing a book. Authors never make money from books.
No.
Right.
We're in the hole, like for real in the hole, right? Because it's such an expensive endeavor. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a labor of love. So thank you for saying that, Stuart.
Yes, it does. I mean, it costs the authors tens of thousands, possibly even over 100,000 just to get a book out and launched. And so, you know, typically, Dawn, I know this is kind of your motivation, Laura's motivation, Heber's motivation, right, is sharing that experience and giving back to the community at some level. So, so please do support these guys because they are heroes. Their knowledge helps us all do better and inspires us all. So thank you, Dawn. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, but also for jumping in and being so active and getting with the spirit of the session. Really enjoyed the interactions. You know, a shock as usual. Nice work, Leo. Like I said, go find a therapist. And really, thank you everybody for joining. Joan, didn't see you there. How are you doing? So thank you all for joining. Do reach out and follow us on LinkedIn. Subscribe to our newsletter so that you get notification for other webinars. We do 2 a month, usually a fun one like this, a kind of deep insight one like this, and then a demo webinar. So come to those. We always try and make them a little bit fun, a little bit different. I'm not a big fan of talking heads. So thank you everybody for joining. Dawn, a million thanks.
Thank you, Stuart, for having me. And remember, everybody, it's about the people.
It's about the people and it's about the eggs, not the ducks.
Yeah.
Which is where we started the conversation. Excellent. Very good. Thanks, folks.